right. I am going to kick this off. All right. Make sure I can click my slide. Good morning, everyone. And my name is Meg Detloff, and I work for USGS PNAMP. Thanks for joining us for the PNAMP Fish Monitoring Work Group meeting. A couple of housekeeping tips before we get started. Please mute yourself by clicking the little microphone over your on your Teams platform. Also, please turn off your camera if you're not speaking. It helps folks stay focused. If you don't see the toolbar, try moving your mouse a little bit, and it should pop up on the top or the bottom of your screen, kind of depending on how you're using the app. You should see something similar to what's on my screen, and this is your little microphone, so you'll want to click that and mute yourself as well. If you're on the phone, you use *6. We are recording the meeting, and I will post the recording on our YouTube page in a few days. And I will also distribute information on how to access the presentation, so you can access all the links in today's presentation. If you have any questions or feedback, please use the chat function or raise your hand and unmute yourself. And you'll need to make sure you unmute yourself. We can't actually do that. We've noticed recently, too, some team users have been having issues with the chat function. So if you don't have chat, if you could please unmute now and let me know. We're kind of trying to identify the issue, and knowing the agency would kind of help, because it does seem to be particular agencies' firewalls are causing us issues. Also, if you guys want to look at the screen, there's a couple of troubleshooting tips. So just like exit the meeting and rejoin. Try Microsoft, excuse me, Edge instead of Chrome. Use a desktop version instead of a browser version. And I'll kind of pause here to see if anybody's having this problem. Okay, cool. That's good news. If not, obviously, if you have any questions or anything, please do not hesitate to unmute and just ask questions or have comments. So the next thing I would like you guys to do, if your chat is working, if you could open up your chat and type in your name and affiliation, that helps us keep track of participation and gets you familiar with the chat function. And while you guys are doing that, I'm going to go over the agenda. So today I will give a brief recap of the fish monitoring work group, charter, initial task list, and then we'll give task updates and introduce and discuss the potential new pit tag array task. And so with that, I'm going to just kind of kick it off and give you guys some background on the project, because a lot of people are kind of coming into this new and haven't been there for the initiation of the task kind of at the beginning of 2021. So let's see here. Make sure you guys have everything. The fish monitoring work group supports collaboration, communication, and coordination among fish monitoring practitioners in the Pacific Northwest for effective monitoring and assessment methods and efficient data sharing. We also support CAP and the StreamNet program by facilitating discussions among data providers and reporting and also decision makers related to fish monitoring data sharing and reporting needs. Check out the project website on pnamp.org for the charter, links to the task pages, and additional details about the work group. And Amy will drop that link here in a second for you guys. I would also love to acknowledge our core team. If you guys want to turn your cameras on real quick so people can affiliate names with faces. We could not do this without the support of Casey Bleasner with ODF&W, Marika Dobos with IDFG, Russell Scranton with BPA, Nancy Leonard with PSMFC and StreamNet, and Laura Erickson also with PSMFC and StreamNet, and Jen Bayer with USGS PNAMP. We rebooted this project in early 2021, and there was a deliberate plan made with PSMFC and StreamNet to work together across projects with a goal of efficiency and ensuring that the tasks and goals were sequenced appropriately. The initial task list came from a survey that we distributed, and it was broadcast widely to everyone that had participated in a fish-related PNAMP activity in the past few years. And then we whittled it down by setting criteria using the charter, basically meaning that we will not take on a task without a lead and a clear outcome in mind. It is important for us that we respect the time and energy that the leads and the task team members are contributing. ideally, we want to ensure a direct benefit in the task. And so since a lot of this is in-kind time for folks, like we want to make sure it's worth their while. Today's meeting, we're going to highlight the work we've done over the past year and a half by updating you on the completed and in-progress tasks, as well as initiate discussion on the potential future task. And so you guys can see down here, these are the completed ones and these are the current active tasks. We hold 3 full fish monitoring work group meetings a year during January, April, and October. Typically, we'll give task updates and have a technical speaker and a call for feedback on the project or a task, and we also discuss potential future work. On the slide, you can see some examples of our past tech talks. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to contact me, and these are all available on our YouTube page, and also you can access the presentations on our website as well. And so with that, I'm going to hand this over to Nancy and Laura to talk about the completed tasks. And after they get done with all of the tasks, I'm going to ask for questions and comments. So if you guys do have any questions or comments, just kind of hold off during this section till the end, and we can answer some questions if you guys do have stuff come up. And with that, I will hand it over to Nancy.
Yeah, so the first one we're updating on is the data display that started a couple of years ago almost now, where we brought together a subset of data stewards and data consumers to help us better understand how we could improve access to the high-level indicators we have on the Catfish HLI map-based query. And that resulted in a series of recommendations from this task group that went back to the StreamNet Steering Committee and Executive Committee, which were reviewed by them and supported. So we have made modifications, first by creating a tabular version of the map query so we could more easily support locating and filtering records for the specific content people might want to see. So instead of being limited to the map base. And that went forward and got done. So you can see that on our website now. If you go to streamnet.org and click on data maps, click and select the Catfish HLI, you'll now see we have a map version and a tabular version. And I believe the next one is a continuation of this one. So you can go to the next slide. So what came out of the previous data display? Some of the recommendations were easy for us to implement, and the StreamNet Steering Committee and Executive Committee understood how we would go about doing it. There was a subset of the recommendation we received from the first data display that we required a little bit more guidance to make sure that we would be implementing those recommendations correctly. So we convened a second work group with Lara helping me out, lead the second one, to get a better understanding of the availability of data for populations that do not have data in our Catfish HLI. So we work with a consultant, Ray Beamsdorfer, to help us collate, a first draft of whether data existed for a given population, or if that population is not monitored for some reason, or if it's extirpated. So we compiled that Excel spreadsheet. We had the participants of this task group review that spreadsheet as best as they could for accuracy, and we'll be using that output of that process, the spreadsheet, to provide a more holistic picture of the availability of data through our Catfish HLI mapper and tabular queries, so that when someone comes to this tool, they can have an understanding that yes, we have Catfish HLI high-level indicators, but just because we don't have high-level indicators doesn't mean that data doesn't exist out there. So we can point them to where other data may exist for populations that are not in our system with an HLI. So that one is moving forward. We also receive input on how we could reorganize the data we have in our system to make it easier for people to be able to get a quick look at the high-level indicators related to a grouping of fish population that we've been referring to the Columbia Basin Partnership Task Force stocks or groups. And we worked with this task team to figure out how best we could organize that content, as well as providing additional content from the final report produced by this MAFAC Columbia Basin Partnership Task Force, so that people that would see the data presented in this manner on our query system would understand why we're organizing the catfish HLIs. Both of these topics, we got a lot of good input from the task team to help refine the recommendation on how we could go forward to implement them. And we shared that with the StreamNet Steering Committee and Executive Committee just this last month. And they reviewed it, and then we will be going ahead over the next couple of months to actually implement that. So if you check back in 2023, early 2023, you should see those modifications on our two systems. Next slide. And now we're up to Russell, right?
No, it's still the completed, so it's the CAP DES one that Mike was working on.
Oh, sorry, that one. Thanks. The other aspect we worked on was to clarify what we meant by smolt equivalent in our data exchange standard. This again relates back to the CAP fish HLI data that we have in our system. And we work with a group of experts that helped us further define what we meant by smolt equivalent. So when a data consumer comes to our system to get data, they have a clear understanding of what they are downloading and accessing. And we have that pretty much ready to go in the next version of the DES when we release it, which I believe will be earlier in 2023. So if you need it beforehand, let us know and we can get it to you. Next one.
Thanks, Nancy. And then this one's Lara.
Yeah, so the purpose of this task, which I believe, no, not the last of our completed, but one of our completed tasks, was using the existing catfish high-level indicators to inform adult abundant estimates for the groups identified by MAFAC and incorporated in the Council's 2020 addendum. So with this task, we provided the following information about the population estimates that may be included in each rolled up MAFAC stock NOSA value. So some of the information that we looked at and included was the number of populations with a stock that contain a whole population NOSA estimate. For each population, we specified whether there were JACs included or not included in the estimate. If lacking spawner abundance, we looked at whether it had an escapement or whether it had escapement abundance. And then also the number of populations included within a stock with a partial population NOSA estimate. We specified whether JACs were included and or not included in the estimate. So I encourage you to look at the outcome from kind of the census, and it's captured in a report that was that we produced summarizing the available data, both from StreamNet as well as other sources. So the report's available at the link you see there, and it was also shared with StreamNet.
And for those of you that are on StreamNet, I'm getting ready to email it out to the executive committee with some more background content so they can connect it back to a request we received in 2021 from the council. So they'll be coming out shortly by email as well.
Yeah, and I'd like to note too, we're still we're doing a little bit of shifting on some of the information in the report. So you can kind of see it as is right now, but like Nancy said, as it gets shared with StreamNet XCOM, we'll kind of adapt it and update it. And so it's in a little bit of a transition right now, but for the most part, this is the basic content. So if you guys have any questions, obviously reach out.
The only content that's going to change will be some background information we're adding. Context. So so the summary of the status of the data availability, that won't be changing.
Yeah, the data itself is still available there, and that won't adjust. It's just the context. So.
And Ryan, I see your question to share the link in the chat. Yeah, we'll get that in there. I'll figure out how to do that in just a sec. So these are all of our completed tasks. And I said I would come back and circle around and ask if you guys have any questions or comments on any of the tasks, I can go back in the slides if there's any specific tasks you want to talk about. So feel free to type those in the chat, or go ahead and unmute yourself and ask questions. And I'll just kind of pause for a minute and let you guys do that. And then I'll dig that link out for you, Ryan. Whoops.
I have it, actually.
Oh, perfect. Great, Laura.
Yeah.
All
You're
right,
perfectly clear. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Doing great work.
Well, you know where to find us if you have any follow-up questions.
Exactly.
Meg.
And then, yeah, no problem. And if you guys do think of stuff later, feel free to reach out to me, and I can try to answer them, or I can obviously direct you to one of the task leads or someone who would be able to answer your questions. So next up, what we're going to do is talk about the current tasks. So let me get everything lined up for that. All right. So I just want to say thanks to Nancy and Laura for presenting that and all the hard work you guys did in those tasks. It's really good work, and I think is going to benefit a lot of people. So for this one, what we're going to do is I'll ask for questions and comments after each task instead of at the very end, because I know it's a bit of fire hose with everything that we do. So I don't want to make you guys wait if there's something on your mind for a particular task. So we'll pause after each of these tasks and just kind of see if anybody has any questions or comments. And with that, I will hand it over to Morgan Bond.
All right, thank you. So the carrying capacity standard task, just to sort of review for everybody, this is really in an effort to sort of compile different modeling exercises, because people are estimating capacity at various spatial scales, but these are typically large scale estimates. So populations, subwatersheds, maybe larger. And Russ in particular noticed that one of the difficulties we have is that lots of different groups that are doing these kinds of estimates to try and get primarily juvenile rearing or spawning capacity are using pretty different data sources. And these are sometimes on the ground data, but often remote sense data or spatial data that maybe comes into these models at really different resolutions or sort of spatial grains and extents. And so it's quite a challenge to know what to do with these types of outputs and what they really represent. And so this task is really to try and come up with some standards for at least documentation, if not for specific layers to use, for how we generate the outputs for this types of modeling, but then also what data are going into them. And so we had a meeting recently where Kevin C., who's produced a number of these estimates, and Brian Mashoff, who has been trying to compile different estimates to display on a common spatial sort of framework, talked about some of the difficulties that they've had putting this together. And so we've started working on a document to talk about these different sort of techniques that people are using, maybe when they're appropriate, what types of spatial information should go into these things, and really what the appropriate uses of some of these capacity outputs are. We distributed that outline for that document, and over the summer, we got feedback from a number of folks. So thank you for taking the time to look at that and respond to that. We are currently incorporating the comments that we got back in September into that outline, and then altering the document as that's going together accordingly. And so we're pulling all this information together, and we should have essentially a draft of that final document coming up in the next couple of months.
Awesome. Thanks, Morgan.
That's what I've got,
Tim
yeah.
or Russ, do you guys have any additional comments or anything you want to add? Okay, cool. And so I'll open that up too now. If anybody in the meeting has any questions or comments for Tim, Morgan, or Russ, feel free to unmute yourself or type your question in the chat.
One quick thing is, if you do want to participate in the next meeting, again, don't hesitate to reach out to Meg, myself, or Morgan, and we'll make sure you get added when we send out the next meeting invite.
Perfect. Thanks, Russ. All right, cool. And obviously, like I said earlier in the completed stuff, if you guys do like think of questions later, feel free to reach out to me or any of the contacts on the list here. All right, next up is Evan Brown. Evan, I don't know if you're out there. And if Evan isn't, Nancy's going to pick this up for us. So let me check real quick. Because Evan was in another meeting. Okay. Yeah, I don't see him, Nancy. So if you want to go ahead, that'd be great.
Okay. So another task that we've been working on through the fish monitoring work group has to do with how we can find a more consistent approach to how we develop GIS layers to help connect to data that we receive at StreamNet. So we started off by focusing on bull trout through this task group, and we had Van Hare, who is the lead for the Pacific State Marine Fishery Commission GIS Center, and Evan Brown from IDFNG serving as co-leads for this task group. And they basically start off with an approach that would be, okay, how could we use the information we currently have at StreamNet to then develop these more polygon based layers to help connect data that we receive at a higher level instead of individual transact locations. So they pulled together a draft approach that they shared with the task group in April. They had a follow-up meeting in June, and they are currently working on refining the bull trout layer that they are testing out with this new approach by reaching out to the different bull trout experts to have them review the GIS boundaries and names that could be used for us as we move forward and start connecting bull trout data to layers. These maps could also end up being used by BPA or the council. So we're also keeping in mind their need as we're moving forward with the standard approach that would guide how we develop these broader polygon-based layers for our data needs here at Pacific State. And, did I miss anything, Meg?
No, that sounds about right. I know the guys are reaching out to bull trout experts in the region, and essentially this whole thing will be able to kind of be, I don't know if transferred is the right word, but used for additional listed and non-listed fish species. So hopefully it'll kind of help with more than just one species of fish.
Yeah, so it's basically we're testing out the approach that then we could use to develop other polygon layers.
Yeah, and they're shooting for a complete proof of concept by mid-December, which we'll distribute or we can have a meeting to kind of discuss and bring people in. Go ahead, Russ.
One other element of it is the focal species range. So while it's population boundaries and GIS boundaries, the GIS boundaries is the thing to be added. Is that one of the things that we were looking at is those consistent GIS polygons for specific populations, but also creating focal species ranges, which includes the migration corridors. So when people are doing GIS exercises to look at things that are relevant to migration, spawning, rearing, all the things that are part of the fish distribution layers, those can be displayed. Connected habitats or other things that traditionally may not be displayed are shown in these things. So besides the specific population layers that they're going to produce, I think there's an aspect to produce these focal species range maps, limited and excluding the ocean, but covering the rivers, main stem areas as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Russ. Thanks for adding on to that. Does anybody out there have questions or comments? Again, feel free to unmute or just go ahead and type it in the chat and I can read it. All right. Yep. All right. Seems good. All right. Next one, we are going to talk about juvenile density, snorkel and electrofishing, and Russ is going to present this one.
Thank you, Mike. Casey Pleasner, myself, Marika Dobos have been leading the effort to come up with some, let's see, it's controlled vocabulary and discussions for shared exchanges for information related to juvenile distribution, specifically snorkel surveys, electrofish surveys, to make sure that that information can be shared. There's a brief discussion at the last StreamNet steering committee meeting where there is the opportunity to exchange and share this type of information in the current related data set. So our goal is to make sure that we can provide some standard information and structure to help support exchanging consistent snorkel and electrofishing data. We're going to have a next meeting, and we found some areas that we think could use more discussion. Want some input and feedback from other biologists, specifically related to capturing age information. How do you connect the age information with this or size or species related information and standards. There's our next meeting. We're also going to focus on, there's an application that BPA is funding related to the carrying capacity effort. Dan Isaac has a fish data analysis tool. It's called FDAT, and it's a model prediction. He's doing an update for the entire Columbia Basin to kind of cover the same range that Kevin C did in their product to create something that may be comparable. But we're trying to do a data call using this data standard. If people can provide that information, we can provide and show their data inputs as something that can be used to show as a comparison to what people had as an output. So one of the things that we talked about in the carrying capacity paper is how do you validate information and how do you show observation data relative to models. So that's an important step in validating these models, is making sure that you can pull in some observation data for multiple years or single years to be able to do comparisons. So we're going to, at our next meeting, we're going to cover some modifications and discussion of the proposed controlled vocabulary and data exchange standard. We're going to have a presentation from Dan Isaac to kind of cover the the use and the example product that's going to be produced, and have opportunities for a discussion on other things that come up. So let's see. I don't think there's anything else at the moment. Marika, Casey, if you have anything else to add, let me know.
Okay. Hey, Nancy, this is Evan. I'm in the meeting now.
Oh, hey, Nancy, hey, Evan. Yeah, Nancy covered the GIS one, so we're pretty solid.
But anyone can ask Evan questions now.
Yeah. If you guys have any questions for Evan, and actually backpedaling to Tim Copeland had a question. Isn't Russ's comment same as essential fish habitat? So this applies to the GIS boundaries and the population names.
Yeah, it's similar to that, but it's the essential fish habitat and the current StreamNet fish focal species layers are all line-based. And so the goal is to make them polygon-based to show those things as a polygon. So.
And then Evan, I know you didn't hear Nancy's spiel on the topic, but I don't know if you have anything you want to add or any updates or.
Just that we have finished completing the bull trout pilot, and we have come up with a list of needs and questions for the group, and we can go ahead and present at the next available convenient meeting time. Oh, and also that'll be the evaluation of the polygons representing the fish ranges and populations and core areas and unknown areas, as well as the proposed naming schemes. Yeah, that's it.
Excellent. Perfect, Evan. All right. Awesome. So obviously, if you guys do have additional questions about that topic, feel free to contact me and I can put you in touch with Van or Evan. And then I'm going to pause for a second just to see if anybody has any questions on the juvenile density task. And obviously, again, feel free to type it in chat.
One more actually clarification point, which is I glossed over the one of the things that were asked from our first meeting was use cases, and we have it here. ODF&W is building and is considering, how do they build a database or how do they share this information? So, how do other agencies? Well, some agencies do have data systems to manage this type of data already. ODF&W is looking at options to how do they share this more globally across their state. So that was one of the use cases. The other one is that we do have terms and conditions to provide viability assessment data to NOAA. So all of our people who are doing spatial distribution monitoring, we want to make sure that that data becomes accessible and shared through a common database to make it as easy as possible for NOAA to access that for status assessments. And we also have support the use case of carrying capacity products. As I referenced Dan Isaac's product, validating Kevin C's products or other things that are being used to guide habitat restoration. So those are the potential use cases that we had documented. So we'll cover that more in the next meeting as well.
Excellent. Thanks, Russ. All right. Did anyone else have any comments or questions? All right. We'll move along to the next one. Rotary screw trap and data collection. Russ is going to talk about this one too.
Okay. So while there is a larger controlled vocabulary data exchange for the analytical outputs of juvenile outmigrants, there's been some questions about rotary screw traps in general and the other data that's captured, and making sure that data can be more interchangeable, interoperable. Two processes that were identified from a small trap analytic workshop was making sure that some common tools, common analytical tools can use shared information. But for that information to be used, you have to have some controlled vocabulary. So if you have standard analytical tools that are being developed in R that can be shared and you use common codes and field headers, it may allow those types of analytical tools to be more broadly shared. We also discussed that there is some discussion about real-time results and modeling for run timing of when fish are moving through the system. How often can information be updated preliminarily and provided? And there's questions about while the outmigrant data provides summaries of general abundance, there are questions related to summaries of fish condition, fish weight, length, size, and changes throughout time. So those are some things that we're looking at discussing of how do we share that information, how do you provide some standards such that those can be used in some analytical tools, or have those analytical tools designed for some common structure. That's the main piece. We're going to continue to, I think, have an upcoming meeting to, we're going to continue to have future discussions on this, also related to potential database structure development with other partners. I wanted to know our task team is Marie Godobos, Casey Bleasner, and we'll start with Polly Gibson, but Polly Gibson has taken on additional responsibilities in project management and is no longer on our task team. It doesn't necessarily mean, well, we'll definitely be missing Polly, but if anybody else wants to join, help lead this team, please reach out to Casey and Marika and myself. Casey and Marika, is there anything else you want to follow up and add? The only other pieces we are going to work in the next month on a follow-up meeting, probably set for potentially in December timeframe.
Excellent. Perfect for us. And I'll just kind of pause for a minute for you guys to type in the chat. And Casey says nothing to add. Thanks, Russ. And if you guys have any questions, feel free again to unmute or type into the chat. right. Okay, cool. So that wraps up our updates on our ongoing tasks. And again, feel free to contact me if you guys have any questions. And like I said earlier, you can access the project page on the PNAMP website. Amy dropped that link earlier. If you want more details on the tasks, or if you want to look at past events and go into any of that documentation, all of that stuff is on the project page. And then each task has its own individual page. So you can go to those pages and get more details. And with that, we're going to kind of talk about a new task. Let me see. So now that we've covered the completed and in progress task, we're going to discuss the potential new task. Marika Dobos and Russell Scranton will give background and lead discussion on pit tag arrays. And let me see, Marika was in a different meeting, but she was going to pop back in. Perfect, Marika. So I am going to hand it over to her to talk about this project.
All right. Hopefully you guys can hear me. So in past meetings, we've sent out surveys to people to figure out what kind of questions people have and what products we can potentially work on to provide assistance for biologists. And pit tag arrays seem to come up pretty often. There's a lot of complexities with regards to pit tag arrays, so I'm going to try and chop this up into a few hopefully digestible pieces. First of all, as you can see in the picture, pit tag arrays come in a variety of shapes, sizes, designs, and are installed in streams of every shape, size, and different. And there's different challenges with regards to the sites that these pit tag arrays are installed into. So the infrastructure in itself is pretty complex. So if you go to the next slide, Meg. So first I'm going to talk about our connections with a couple of different groups, one being the Pit Tag Steering Committee and this in-stream pit tag detection system subcommittee of the Pit Tag Steering Committee. So there's different parts and pieces when it comes to talking about pit tag arrays, and I would be remorse to not mention these folks. So Gabriel Brooks has been gracious to provide kind of the overarching goals, some of the things that they're working on, and an update. This is a fairly new subcommittee, so I will let Gabe talk about maybe how this subcommittee was formed and the goals, products, and the update, their last update from the meeting, if he's available. Gabe, are you on by chance?
Yeah, I don't see him out there, Marika. Oh, nice. Perfect. Great.
I am online. Yeah, I can give you a quick update. Thank you for that. Is it okay if I open a share tray and try to throw up my PowerPoint presentation?
Yeah, totally. I'll stop sharing.
All right, can you see that fine?
I can. Can you guys see it?
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay, I will. I'll just give you a quick overview of the subcommittee. As Marika mentioned, it's a pretty new subcommittee under the Pit Tag Steering Committee. We adopted the charter back in 2019. So we haven't had a whole lot of time to work through the items on the charter, but the subcommittee as a whole consists of 12 members from the primary agencies through the basin that operate pit tag arrays, including a lot of the tribes, with representation from Pacific states. Usually Don Wharf and a couple of members from Pacific states are on the calls as well. And John Tenney and Nicole are always there. And we have recently had a member from Biomark give us updates on their products. We've only had 6 meetings. So we haven't made a whole lot of progress on the items on our charter, but we have had an opportunity to update the PTAG steering committee along the way. If you want to look at the charter or see the names or get contact information for the representative for your agency, all of that information is available on the PTAGUS website. So the purpose of the subcommittee is more or less, it's a collection of the people who do the nuts and bolts of the in-stream arrays. Our primary purpose, as you can see, is to provide the technical guidance for how these sites get installed, how they're operated, and what we're doing as a group and different agencies as far as maintaining these sites. Establishing specifications for these sites. I know, as Marika mentioned, there are so many different sites out there. So how do we establish specifications that will encompass all of the different arrays? We have coordinated training and plan to do that when the next PTAGUS hosts the symposium. Will be a core group responsible for pulling together some of the talks for that and providing training through that. And that will also be the facilitation of our webinars. So the first two, the technical guidance, what we've done to date has primarily been in-house. Each meeting we've had has had a round robin where we've gone through and we've each talked about what we're doing specifically with our sites. That includes from my perspective where NOAA's R&D program is at and what we're working on currently, and take input from the group at large on where we should be focusing our efforts in the future. And then establishing and updating system specifications is one of the key things that we've started to work on. That includes an updated site specifications for PTAGUS. We noticed that if you went in to PTAGUS and looked at a lot of the different PTAG arrays, as a data consumer, you were often looking at two completely different images of what these sites look like. Some of them were drawn in Word. We wanted to provide a standard that could be used by all of the groups submitting the site diagrams to PTAGUS. So we came up with the standard document to give information on how to produce this standardized site diagram. So that includes stuff like a similar eye altitude. So when a biologist goes to look at your PTAG array, they're essentially seeing the same thing from array to array. Drawing in the high and low water lines. So a data consumer that goes to look at a PTAG site on PTAGUS, they have an idea of whether this site that operates year round, does it have times during the year where it won't be picking up pit tags, and then just show where those antennas are placed in stream. The other thing that we've begun to work on is a site survey that would show read ranges over these antennas and could be updated as groups get out there and do their O&M efforts. And it would also show high and low water lines to give a visual indication of the site efficiency at a course scale, what it could possibly do depending on the water level. And then as far as coordinating with the PTAG steering committee, as I mentioned, we've attended the meetings and given them an update of where we're at with our action items. And we've worked with the steering committee for any questions that come up. The one I'm thinking of now was the safety issue with the FS 2001 yellow brick battery issue. That was something that went back and forth between the experts on the subcommittee that use this equipment in stream and the steering committee. And then we, as I mentioned, we'll work with PTAGUS on the next PTAG symposium to develop talks to highlight what different groups in the subcommittee are doing with regards to antenna design and installation practices, and that will continue to satisfy that portion of our charter. So that was just a quick update. I will stop presenting and then turn it back to Marika and answer any questions.
Thanks, Gabriel. Appreciate that. And I bring up both the subcommittee and the pit tag steering committee is because some of the needs that the biologists have expressed in some of our past meetings involves a lot of different components. So Meg, if you want to go to the next slide in the presentation. So we've kind of broken these needs down into 3 different groups. With regards to the hardware is, I think, where we can work with the in-stream pit tag detection subcommittee, because they're already working on the nuts and bolts on a lot of this with regards to site locations, the pit tag array infrastructure itself, the computers that run it. There's a variety of different things that can collect pit tag data, from cheese blocks to MUX systems to master control systems now, and there'll probably be a lot more coming down with the advancements in technology. Data management, this is where we can work with the pit tag steering committee. PitTagis is the large database in which pit tag data are being stored. So the subcommittee is working with the pit tag steering committee, and then we as a fish monitoring group can also tap into some of those questions with regards to, there's a lot of data that are being collected at pit tag arrays, not just the detections themselves, but there's a lot of environmental data that can be associated with them. Gabriel brought up some of that with regards to flow, detection, distance. There are other data that are collected at a lot of these sites, temperature being one of them, noise, and information on whether or not respective antennas are operating or if they're out. So we can work with the pit tag steering committee to and the subcommittee to figure out what data are important to biologists with regards to the use of pit tag data. Where are if some of these are appropriate for PitTagis in regards to storing a lot of these data, metadata as well. You know, what are some details of these sites that could be important to understand when people are using pit tag data, and to facilitate working with these groups to identify needs and products that we can put out as a group. So that's kind of the first part of it, the nuts and bolts of it. The next category being identified as pit tagging tools. I think some folks have already been working on this. I know Ryan Kinzer probably works a lot of this in the Snake Basin because he deals with big in-stream modeling, and it involves being able to take raw data and to properly clean it and manage the data that are absolutely needed for data analysis. So being able to identify who's working on these tools, can these tools be available, and can they be customizable to different programs, different pit tag array sites, and where can we store some of that to be available for folks to use in being able to summarize pit tag data and then make it ready and available for data analysis, whatever that may be for a given program. And then the next step is really the analysis part of it. The data and cleaning, joining tools are categorized under here, but really this is kind of the next step is once those data are available for analysis, how are people estimating site efficiencies, where are they getting their pit tags, and how many pit tags are they utilizing to estimate site efficiencies, and what are these pit tag arrays being used for? Are they used for escapement estimates for adults, for juveniles? Are they looking at survival, SARs, movement, there are some IMWs, intensively monitored watersheds, like the Metau, the Lemhi, that have a lot of pit tag arrays on the landscape, and obviously they have specific purposes for that. But being able to communicate as a group the uses that these pit tag arrays are providing to these different programs, and can those information be available and useful for other programs, so that we don't have to figure a lot of this out unnecessarily. Russ, do you have anything to add to any of this?
No, I think, well, two quick things. I think one of the things that we're also looking at is clarification is the general term of metadata associated with it. When people do sampling, I think one of the things we had with COVID, there was a lot of concerns about sample sizes out there. I just met with a contractor yesterday, and we were talking about, can they change their sample size of their tagging in a specific population? And I said, I'm not sure. I mean, how would that potentially affect the CSS studies, other things? So, there's a lot of coordination. How do we, and during COVID, we lost the ability to operate a lot of traps. We lost facilities. What did that mean overall? And so after a year is complete, the other thing that happens is, while we may know how many fish are tagged, some of the related metadata of, well, what does that tagging group represent? Does it represent an even distribution across the run? Is it early? Is it a late representation? Those things aren't readily available. So how do we improve that access to that type of information to make sure that any users are using the data correctly without making too many assumptions? And hopefully, again, knowing who the people are that they need to contact to understand about those sample sizes and those designs are readily available. So I think that's the big thing. Is we also have a couple other tools. We've been talking with our CBR contract with UW and others about modifying those analytical tools that they have to help people support their designs. So I think those are, this is a forum where we have an opportunity to get people together to share those tools, discuss the tools, and make them more accessible. I think, Marika, you and I were talking that a lot of the CBR tools are built in Python. A lot of people are using R. How do we look for some balance? How do we look for something that allows more flexibility for these analytical tools? So that's what this subcommittee or this group could potentially do, is provide more information on all the tools that are available and a resource to discuss and talk about potential improvements, or collaborate in understanding the general framework that's out there.
Yeah, so this sounds like a lot. Obviously, there's a lot to this. With regards to how data are currently stored and how to access that data, and check to see what does that data mean. Right now, there's not a lot. Pitagis and Nicole is on the call right now to answer questions on the Pit Tag Steering Committee, or any questions on Pitagis. But currently, with regards to these interrogation sites, there is a point of contact and a data steward, and it's encouraged for folks that are trying to utilize pit tag array data to contact those people to understand site details until we're maybe better able to record metadata on the sites. But that's kind of where we're at with pit tag arrays right now. So because this is a lot, we don't want to put all this on the fish monitoring work group. We also don't want to double up on something that the subcommittee is already doing. So that's why we need to keep communications with these two groups and outline some products that are feasible for this group, that are important to the group as well. So if you go to the next slide, Meg, I kind of outlined a few ideas out there with regards to if there are tools that people are working on currently with pit tag arrays, whether that be like data cleaning, a power analysis to estimate your ideal pit tag sample sizes for site efficiencies or what have you. I'd like to provide this as a forum to gather that information together, identify those tools and make those available, and find a way, whether that's through the PNAMP website or uploading those R codes and making them available through GitHub or some other means. And then maybe a workshop similar to what we did in 2019 with regards to the rotary screw trap analysis. There's similar questions and challenges that we have with pit tag arrays, like limited sample sizes, and especially in these past years with low returns, that I think a workshop might be pretty useful for people to just kind of see where programs are at, what are the challenges they've had with pit tag arrays, how are they dealing with those challenges, so that we can start those forums and conversations, and store those data somewhere where we can where they can be available for others to use. And I don't know, Russ, if you had any ideas on any other potential products. I kind of wanted to keep this, like I said, feasible. It's a lot to take on, and it'd be nice to at least kind of have a few items that we can definitely tackle with regards to folks' times.
Yeah, and yeah, we're trying not to put everything on the plate, but I think it's a good idea to list those ideas, and then with people who are interested, we'll kick off a meeting and sit down and prioritize what those tasks are. And I'd say, similar to the RST workshop, we had an original pit array workshop, and there were things that were identified that I think the in-stream pit tag steering committee are not taking on, that could be facilitated, and this just provides some standard ways to exchange and share information across partners to help facilitate that coordination. So this is the PNAMP Fish Monitoring Work Group is a way to help facilitate that coordination and tasks that we may be doing with pit arrays or analysis, or the analytical tools and marking designs. So if interested, we're going to have to open up for discussion, but hopefully we'll carry this on forward.
And Meg, you can just go to the last slide. It's just kind of provide some time for people to talk about, like, what needs are there? Is there anything that is kind of a unanimous, we need this, so please work on this, and then just getting some interest from folks, who are the folks out there working on pit tag arrays, and are they willing to be a part of this group and help provide some of the information that is needed to others.
Excellent.
So,
sorry, Russ. One other thing I just want to mention real quick too. I know everyone's shifting, and I know everyone's getting new people and losing people. So we are cognizant of time and staff constraints. So, I know the holidays are crazy, but if we can kind of just get this rolling, and you guys can let us know if you're interested, or where you see priorities, like where we can kind of target some of this, I think it'll be a little more efficient and kind of help guide us a little bit better in getting stuff done. So go ahead, Russ.
Yeah, the only other comment I was going to make, which is one of the things that I found in analysis, and we talked with CBR and with Excel-Learn, is that one of the tools that we have out that I think is helpful is the collaboration of other data sets. How do we make sure that the temperature data is integrated and exchangeable, so you can put that and attach that to this? How do we make sure the flow data, how do we make sure all the relational data that you may want to have that's not in Pitagus can be also made available for analysis that will help us, whether it's, where are fish transported, are they, experiencing what TDG levels, what are the other related data that is important for integration with pit tags, genetics, can we cover? And so that, I think that's the other topic that was one of the bullets, but we didn't explicitly say that I think is very important on the analytical side to ensure that we make sure that we can coordinate and facilitate that exchange of that information for these types of tools. So that's one of the other topics in there.
And then just so you guys know, in case you don't have chat, Marika had to step out. She's like dual meeting, so I really appreciate her being able to kind of step out and come back in. So she said to let her know if anyone has any questions specifically for her. And with that, I'm just going to go ahead and open the door. So if you guys want to unmute and ask questions, or if you want to type a question in chat, I can read it. If you guys see any places like you could really use help with this, or I really need help with analysis, or, you know, what is everyone else using? I had somebody contact me this morning and say, you know, we're getting ready to put some pit tag arrays in, and so it'd be really helpful if we could kind of get some input from the community. So if you guys have any of that and want to bring it up, that would really be helpful and help us kind of figure out what to do first.
I'll break the ice, Megan. So this is Gabriel at NOAA. I just want to point out that under the BPA funded R&D project that I run, a portion of my time has always been set aside for basin-wide pit tag support. So if that question ever comes to you or anyone else on this call, hey, we're thinking about putting in some pit tag arrays, where do we start? Definitely feel free to pass along my contact information. That's part of what I'm funded to do. So I'm certainly not an expert in everything, but I know most of the people who are. So if that does come up, and it sounds like it did, feel free to provide my contact information for that.
Oh, that's fabulous. Thank you so much, Gabriel. I'll definitely send him your way. Anybody else out there have questions or comments? And also, if you guys are interested in this task and want to be put on the task team, this will give you access to info on development of the task, give you an opportunity to provide input. We'll send out meeting notifications, let you know when there's products. So typically, we're not asking a lot as far as like requiring you to do anything. We just kind of want to get subject matter experts in the room, or people who have a need, and get them in the room so that we can talk to you and get feedback from boots on the ground. So it's really easy to just get an email and be involved, you know, and kind of come to the meetings and participate. You know, it doesn't mean we're going to give you a bunch of work to do. So it's just good to have you guys in the room, because we don't always know exactly what you need. And obviously, just feel free to email me and I can get you on that list. And then Russ has a comment. Do the IPTDS site diagrams produce schematics on the type of connection, nodes, modems, data locations, receivers, etc.?
Specifically not on the site diagram. The diagram's just sort of a world view of how the antennas are laid out in stream. But if you go to that sites page on Patagus, you can see an inventory, and Nicole can speak to this better than I can, but most of that information as far as what's located at the site is captured in the site information page on Patagus. Did that answer your question, Russell?
Yeah, it did. I think because there were some comments we've had, you know, when people are trying to provide remote help, you know, making sure that the connections, what type of modem, what type of things do you have as an additional, just besides the general structure, was helpful. So I'm hoping that you guys were continuing to make that additional site documentation available as in some standard format over that, continuing with you guys.
And that was actually my icebreaker question at our last meeting was, please tell me, specifically what sort of modems you're using to upload your data. And about every agency in the basin had their own modem. And all of that, I believe, is captured in the meeting minutes. And Nicole does a great job of recording everything that's talked about during the meeting. So that sort of information is out there. And again, if a question comes up, I can certainly give options on equipment. We really have talked about and should work on just a broad document on options available for communications. For instance, if you need a satellite modem, here are your options. If you are looking into cell modems, here are some options that are known to work with it. We haven't pulled anything together formally for that, other than just internal discussions. But we can certainly put that on our agenda for meetings coming up.
Gabriel, I have a quick question. If any of the folks out there are interested in finding out like where the meeting minutes are, I'm not sure if you guys if it's open to the public or open to the bios to join those meetings. Like, how would they get information on that stuff?
The meeting itself isn't open to the general public, but all of the meeting minutes are captured. And if you go to Patagus, the About page, if you just hover over that, IPTS subcommittee is one of the items you can select on. And within that, you can get the list of members, the meeting notes, and then a link directly to the charter.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and I think Laura dropped that a little bit earlier. So, and I'll include that in my follow-up email too, so you guys can kind of have contacts with them too. So, because obviously with the fish monitoring work group, we're not trying to step on anybody's toes or reinvent the wheel, and so, we're going to be communicating with the IP TDS committee and kind of trying to work together to kind of do a little bit better collaboration and maybe information distribution, so you guys have better access to stuff or kind of know what's going on. So I know Marika was planning on kind of reaching out with you guys and making sure it's a coordinated effort. Anybody else out there with questions or comments?
Megan, this is Nicole. I just wanted to chime in with a few more details about the metadata that's available about the equipment at a site. We've been expanding that a little bit, and we've been focusing on, the type of transceivers that are used at the site, the dimensions of antennas, and the type of antenna, like a general type, like is it a passover, is it a pass-through, that kind of stuff. But we do have placeholders for things like modems, the equipment used to power the site, and that kind of thing. We're taking them piece by piece and looking for, working with the subcommittee to figure out which ones are important.
Awesome. Perfect, Nicole. Thanks for adding that. All right, cool. Seems to be winding down a little bit. So we'll go ahead and wrap this up. And obviously, like I've said a million times during this meeting, feel free to reach out to me if you guys come up with any questions later or have interest in this and want to be added, or want us to get you into contact with someone else that can connect you. We're here to help. So
Hey, Meg, actually, can one quick question, I guess.
Yeah.
If interest, I guess one of the things is we didn't have a survey link, we didn't have anything, but I guess if this stuff sounds interesting, can you just put in the chat to say, sounds interesting, we'd like to participate. I think it will give us a general idea if this is something worth pursuing, and how far we go.
Excellent. Yeah, Russ, that's a good way to do it. All right. To wrap up today, just a few reminders. If you have interest about a project, I guess specifically about this project or any of the tasks within this project, send me an email and I'll direct you to the necessary contacts. I can also add you to a task team. It could be any of the task teams, like even the stuff that's already been initiated. You are more than welcome to come in now you know, the carrying capacity, the fish population names and GIS boundaries, et cetera, et cetera. So just let me know and I can get you guys connected to that. And this will give you notifications of the upcoming meetings, information, and progress. The task teams don't have meeting dates yet, but expect to be contacted if you're on these task teams in the coming weeks, just for we're going to start scheduling some meetings, hopefully a little bit before the holidays and then follow up after the new year. And to close out today, I would like to give a big thank you to our fish monitoring work group core team, the task leads and the teams, and you guys for joining us and participating. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to help coordinate these activities and develop products to help managers and biologists throughout the region. And I'd just like to say thanks again and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.